There we go. There's the mark. What's up, man?
Not much.
How are you?
Pretty nice. This is cool.
You think so?
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
I think so too, man.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, like I was saying, there's not a lot of conversation that happens around our industry.
Not at all.
You know?
No. And
And-
most of it's nonsense.
Yeah, a lot of it is. The first thing that comes to mind when you say nonsense is all the driver rumors and stuff like that go around.
Other rumors.
Yeah. And I'm sure it happens like other states, other
Every market.
industry, everywhere, man.
Every
Yeah.
single market.
Yeah.
And then I have my ear to the ground, so I hear the craziest rumors. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff they come up with.
Like what?
Well, the most recent one was that you were selling your company to Uber.
Oh yeah. Uber's, yeah, I don't know. Like, when it comes to things like that, it's like, okay, come on, guys. Like, just
It has to make sense.
a little bit of common sense, please.
Yeah.
You know?
That's where conspiracy theories always go wrong, right? It's like it doesn't play out. Like when you start like drawing the lines, like it's got to make sense in the end. Someone has to make money.
Yeah.
Someone has to accomplish something,
Right.
and then people have to be organized enough to do it.
Well, and you have to have, yeah, and then you have to have the right motivation to do it, right? And it has to align with whoever's involved. It has to align with their purpose.
Yeah,
Like, why the hell would Uber ever buy a cab company? That makes no sense.
they already have access to the drivers. That's what they want.
Yeah, that's it. Although a lot of conspiracy theories have been coming true lately.
Yeah, I mean anything can happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean sometimes. I mean, look, that's how you get. That's what innovation is. It's like everyone thinks, well, this is the conventional wisdom. This is what we're going to do. This is how things work. And then someone comes along and just is like, well, you know what? I'm going to turn this completely upside down and do it completely different.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh wow, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Amazon.
They lost so much money for so long, and
Well,
everybody was like,
yeah.
"What are you doing, Bezos?"
Losing money, and then also like how many people were like, I just go to the store and I just get it. Why do I have to?
Yeah.
Why do I want to go on this website and have some guy bring it here? And it's like, now it's the opposite. You're like, why would I go to the store?
Yeah, exactly. I can have it in 2 days. Why am I going to go anywhere to do it?
Yeah.
The only question that comes to my mind now is, okay, well, how much more am I paying for this product
Yeah.
to get it at home? And more often than not, it's not much. It's not a big difference.
That's
might
the
even-
big risk with Amazon, though, right? Because they have so much control now over inventory of everything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, up till now, I actually just recently canceled my Costco membership. I've had
Really?
it since there was a Costco.
Yeah. Come a little closer, bring the mic
But
closer to you.
But I never go to Costco. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, why am I paying for this membership?
Yeah.
So I canceled it because I'm getting everything on Amazon for the same price or better,
Mhm.
and they're bringing it to my home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I have no gauge of where those prices are in relation to what Costco's going to be charging or what whoever else, Walmart.
Yeah. You don't. You have no idea.
Yeah, and I'm not going to comparison shop.
No, you don't have time for that anymore.
I've got the app.
Yeah, exactly. What other rumor besides me selling to Uber? What other rumors have you heard around the industry?
Well, there's a lot of them that are true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of consolidation going on.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of, companies cooperating that didn't used to cooperate, or mergers happening,
Right.
acquisitions happening. There's really, to be honest with you, like 99% of them are true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the rumors come out of Vegas. That's
Mhm.
the market that's the most competitive,
Yeah.
because the giving rides is still a commodity there, right? They don't really do a lot of account work for the most part.
Hmm.
So it's all like on the strip
Yeah.
and at the airport. So it's just a numbers game. It's whoever can get more drivers out there.
Hmm.
And so you hear, that I think they just start rumors about each other.
Yeah. Just to mess with each other.
Yeah. But there's nothing really that stands out. I mean, actually not really directly taxi, but the best rumor that I've heard was that Amazon was considering buying Lyft or taking it over at some point.
Hmm.
And that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
They're not in great shape.
they're in horrible shape.
Yeah.
When the CEO buys $1 million worth of stock just to show people that it's worth something, and then it goes down.
Well, I mean, the other thing is,
it's a problem.
The other thing is, okay. I mean, I heard about that. I don't know. It was a couple of weeks ago. I think
Yeah.
Tom told me about it. I'm like, okay, but what's $1 million to the CEO?
Oh, I mean, it's
You know,
true.
like
Well, the
he's-
stock actually went down after he
Yeah.
bought it, so
Yeah.
it didn't work.
No, it's there. I mean, Uber. The fact that they had Eats, like the pandemic, it just exacerbated the differences between the two companies.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that Uber had Eats and that took off, it saved their ass.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think Dara as a CEO, coming from, I think it was Expedia, like I think he's better equipped to handle the stuff.
For sure. Yeah. He was the right change at the right time.
Yep.
It just you know, I mean, the success story with Uber has been so much of it as luck and then just will to survive. I mean, if you look at Travis, what he did, literally just fighting.
You need, yeah.
UFC style.
Yeah.
Just went I'm
Yeah.
just knocking everything down,
Yeah.
and we'll worry about the consequences later.
Yep.
I mean, not people, whether you agree with that strategy or not, it's irrelevant. It's the only thing that kept, and frankly, probably that even ride-hailing alive. Because ride-hailing probably would have become locally regulated or one with the taxi industry somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was when he stood up to SFMTA and refused to stop. They sent him the cease and desist letter.
Yeah, but the cease and desist, I think more than him standing up to the MTA, it was the city and the mayor. I mean, allegedly, the mayor helping him formulate the strategy for how to be regulated, because Hayashi sent the cease and desist, and that was just about the name, because they used to be called Uber Cab.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
And that was the only thing in there. Just stop calling yourself a cab company, because you're not a cab company.
Yeah,
And if you remember, there was this video for like an Uber, I don't know, holiday party or end of year party or something like that on YouTube. I think you can still find it.
oh, probably.
And Travis is like, thank you to the MTA. I think it's because by dropping the cab, they got a better name.
Yeah, it was an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and I think, and then that, just the fact, I think they knew what they were doing, and the city helped them out, because I think SFMTA had every right to regulate and to step in and take control, because you guys are providing local private transportation. You know what I mean? Especially when Lyft came out. Forget the limo rides that they originally started with. When they started doing ride sharing, or quote unquote ride sharing, MTA had every right to step in and stop it and take over control.
the biggest problem, obviously I used to run a cab company
Yeah.
in San Francisco, and my biggest complaint about it was that we had our hands tied behind our back because we were restricted geographically
Yeah.
to where we could pick people up, and I hated that.
Yeah.
And Uber, figured out a way around that. That was really the biggest. There were two problems that the taxi industry were facing at that time, and people like you and I, we were actually trying to address it.
Mhm.
We were successfully moving in that direction. The one was there was not enough cabs.
Yep.
Number two was my cab takes somebody across the Bay Bridge, they can't bring anyone back.
Right.
Or, take somebody down the peninsula, they can't bring them back. And then you take a city like Los Angeles that's spread out like it is,
Yeah.
and you're saying, you just can't distribute your cabs where you need them to be. And so so what we were doing here, I mean, we were finding ways to work around the limited number of medallions, and we were each doing our own different strategies and finding ways to just get people into a car and transport them.
Well, I tried to
Higher.
put limos on our dispatch,
Exactly.
and they got MTA effectively shut that down.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And-
but I have a dispatch service,
Yeah.
and I have an abundance of demand, and the cars, I don't have enough cabs. The city did not have enough cabs to supply the demand, and they hadn't for decades.
No.
I
Yeah.
mean, and that was the whole reason that gave rise to Uber and Lyft, is we're twice the area of Manhattan, and we had 10% of the cabs. Granted, our population is not as much as Manhattan's,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Second densest city in the country, though.
we
Yeah.
could have used at least 4,000 or 5,000 cabs,
Easy.
easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have hurt the drivers that much. They were making, like, you go out and you make $600 a night
See,
on the Friday nights.
What
like,
I used to
come
argue
on.
with the drivers on that one was, especially like the driver groups, who I have respect for, but I used to fight with them all the time, which was, okay, what you're thinking is that, this is the piece of the pie the cab industry has now, but if we put more cabs out there, we'll actually get a bigger piece of the pie. People will become more reliant on cabs.
Well, the pie will get bigger.
The pie will get bigger.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. And so that was, it's like a flawed logic. Like, well, we only want one 7-Eleven in the city, and people have to come from all over the city to that one 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you put the 7-Elevens where people are, and those 7-Elevens will scale and become busy. But yeah, that was because cabs were unreliable, so people hated cabs in San Francisco.
Well, I think there's this general stereotype
Yeah,
that people hate
that's-
cabs everywhere, right?
yeah.
But and for good reason, man.
Yeah.
For good reason. I mean, it wasn't just the supply. It was, drivers not taking credit cards and forcing customers to go to ATMs, and it was the attitude and the rejecting the short rides, the grocery rides, and just taking the guy with luggage, and it was all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it all came from the fact that there was a limited number of cabs.
Well, that's a good point too, though, because that was the other thing. There was opportunities to fill in these niches,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, if you remember, at one point we got city-only cab medallions,
Right.
and then my own people turned on me and like, no, we gotta let these into the airport, and I was like, no, that defeats the entire purpose. And then, I even had, and I think you were going down that path too, of where you just get like a sedan,
Yeah.
and you're just like, hey, this guy all he does is he gets grocery store calls. That's all he does.
Right.
And just, it's you could fill those niches. We talked about putting cab stands out in the neighborhoods.
The avenues,
And,
yeah.
in the avenues, and I talked about, I had a whole plan of, I had drafted a map of cab stands in the Sunset, and then we were going to dispatch the cabs from the stands. That was my strategy. So that would
Oh,
get the
okay.
cabs
So it's
to
just
the
somewhere for them to queue up or to park,
Yeah.
and then they can just
Yeah.
take, which is what they do at hotels anyway.
Exactly.
Right,
So
yeah.
they would queue up out there, and then they'd
Yeah.
be able to get trips.
Yeah.
But, it's all said and done. It's all water under the bridge. It's just that I think the people like you and we were kind of like that second wave of new blood into the local industry.
Yeah.
And we were just about 6 months behind.
Well,
from where we should, if we had gotten into it 6
I
months
mean,
earlier,
listen.
we
What
probably-
what I've come to accept about myself, at least, is that I suck at startups. I have a
I'm
good.
not interested. Yeah.
I think I've got a good vision for things, but I just was not good at executing, man. I just wasn't. And the projects and the businesses that I was involved in could have been really, really good. I just had no idea what I was doing.
Well,
And-
I think I've probably told you this analogy before. Like, I'm originally from Seattle.
Yeah. Well,
And-
tell everybody who may not know you, like just
Oh,
your
okay.
history in the cab business and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, so, my father and my uncle, they owned cabs in Seattle when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And started driving one of their cabs on the weekends for just extra money, beer money, basically. and I was doing so well at it and having fun, so I quit. I was working in an office. I quit that job and started driving the cab full time. And I did it for, I think, like a summer, like pretty much maybe not quite an entire year. And then I was like, okay, I have to, enough goofing around. I have to go do something.
Yeah.
And I actually really wanted to be a journalist or work in the music business. So then what happened, I got the opportunity to buy a medallion for like $700.
In Seattle.
Yeah, but at the time, they weren't worth a lot of money. So, so this was before you had $1 million medallions, right? So I bought it, and then I went and I did all the work.
What year was this around?
This would have been 1985.
Okay.
Yeah, right in there somewhere. Yeah, so eventually, then instead of just going to work with my family, I actually started a separate cab company and competed with my family.
Did that cause some friction
Yeah.
with dad and uncle?
We they admire. I think they admired my ambition. We just never went after each other.
Yeah.
So there was there was room for everybody.
Yeah.
And we coordinated on some things for sure. Like, but yeah. And then I sold that in 1995.
Wait, question. Is this your badass uncle that you keep talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Greek mafia guy.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 I think I told you about one thing we coordinated on.
Tell me again. I mean, part of what I want to do here is there's so many crazy stories in this industry that I'd love to get those out. I mean, they're going to entertain the hell out of people. So
The
go
industry was a lot scrappier back then. It was all cash business, and you hustled for the streets. And so I had established a presence in one part of downtown Seattle, and this other Greek. There were a lot of Greeks in Seattle in the cab industry at that time. So this other Greek guy, he was trying to steal my business from me. And so we'd established this cab stand kind of on the edge of the financial district, and it was strategic so that we could get all this business. And he would try to swoop in. So we were dispatching over two-way radios, over voice back then. Mm-hmm. And, we'd give the driver the address. And so he got a scanner, and he would start listening and he would swoop in and steal our rides. So finally, we started having a code for certain, because we had places that would 10, 15, 20 rides a day would come out of it. So we'd have the code, and then we'd change the code every week. So the drivers would have the code, and after about 3 weeks, he figured out the codes, right? So then it's like, okay. So one day I'm driving one of my cabs, and I'm on the way down to pick up one of these rides, and he comes up on the right side of me, literally racing me down the road. Cuts in front of me, pulls in front of me to pick up the ride, and I get out of my cab, and I'm like, "Hey, you, blah blah blah."
You can say, yeah, you can say it.
I know, I don't want to though. So I, a lot of times I was a lot younger, so I'm not like this anymore. Okay. But I grabbed, I reached in the window with my left hand, and he had the seatbelt on, and I pulled the seatbelt. And I took my right hand, just started punching. So it didn't go well. Both of us ended up out in the street. The police came and broke it up. And the next day, so of course, the Greek quote unquote mafia. The next day, I don't know what my uncle said to him, but the next day he sold his cab and moved to New York.
Wow.
But that was the scrappy cab business. And nowadays it's evolved. It's quite a bit different, obviously.
Well, and then I think we're propagating the stereotype that this business has always been involved with the mafia or with the what you call it.
This was the 80s.
Which, I mean, how much truth do you think there is to that?
A lot.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that sounds controversial, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was saying, crime doesn't pay. I said, no, it does. It absolutely does. I said, look at Las Vegas.
Look at San Francisco now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the city was built. If the mob never came along, there would be no Las Vegas as we know it. Yeah. It would be a small town in the desert. Maybe something that Boulder would probably be bigger because of the dam, right? That's where all the money would be. Yeah. There'd be nothing in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be Reno.
I don't know. I mean, I've just heard the rumors, man. I don't know the history of it. I know, like I've heard, obviously everybody knows Sinatra was involved in that, in the Rat Pack and all that kind of stuff, and there's talk and rumors about the mob there, but I don't know. I've never really read anything or looked into it in detail to know.
Oh, there's a direct correlation between Chicago, San Francisco, LA, and Vegas, and it's Bugsy Siegel. They have this. I mean, think about it. When you think about it, right? You go into El Cortez. It's one of the original hotel casinos downtown. Mm-hmm. Opened in 1947 or 49 or something. They have Bugsy Siegel stuff all over the place because that was the first one he opened. Before he opened I think the first one he did on the Strip was it the Flamingo or the Tropicana? It was the Flamingo, I think. Tropicana, I can't remember. But he was the one, the movie Casino, where they go in on the Strip. But he opened that first one downtown, and you go in there, and it's like this greatest guy in the world, and whatever, but you can't say crime didn't pay.
That's true.
I mean, that it worked, and not that we should be criminals, but you just have to be real. You got to be honest and say you can't say one thing and do something else. Even San Francisco, you know, you had the mob. We got a giant neon Al Capone on Broadway.
That's true. That's true.
And we're like, hey, look at that. That's cool. Guy with a machine gun up there. It's all right. So.
Yeah. So Seattle, and then your uncle helps you out somehow. And
well,
then,
with that one guy.
Yeah, with the one guy. Yeah. And then what happens next with you?
Yeah. So then I eventually I wanted to move to California, and then a few things happened in my life where I got kind of a what I call get out of jail free card because I'd focused so much on business that I was at the age now that I had friends that were already getting married, and they were those marriages weren't going so well.
Yes.
So I was like, well, maybe
As they tend they tend to do.
Yeah, that's how it happens, right? And so I really wanted to live in California. I was never happy in Seattle, but because we had moved there from Chicago, I was just used to a completely different lifestyle, and so I was down here in San Francisco one year, and I said, you know what, I'm going to move. So I literally just went back home, sold everything, and moved down here. And the reason I sold it was because, as I mentioned, it was a cash business.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't trust anyone to run it if I wasn't there, because they would have just robbed me blind.
Yeah.
So there was no way to account for the cash coming in a reliable manner. So I sold it. And
So was it? But you had expanded beyond the one medallion that you had bought,
oh,
right?
Yeah. I had 13 cabs. I had my own dispatch office. We had when I started brokering medallions at that point, and I was buying and selling cars. I would go to the auction and buy cars. I had a company called Seattle Taxi Supply, I guess I called it, and we were getting hard, equipment for the cars from New York and installing it on the cabs in Seattle. And yeah, I mean, if I'd stayed on that trajectory, I probably would have been like one of the main players in the city eventually, because by then I was also getting involved politically and all of that. And so, but once I would come down here once or twice a year for a few years, it's just every time I came down, it was harder for me to go back. And so I just said, that's it. I got this get out of jail free card. I got a chance to do what I want, so I'm going to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. Looking back, I mean, I really appreciate that I saw the opportunity and took it, because my life in that sense has been just fantastic.
Well, you have to follow your gut. You have to be congruent with yourself in your life. That's the only way that you're going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
Is doing what your instincts tell you to do.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that you had that chance and you were able to do that.
Yeah. So then I came down here, and then I just kind of dinked around for a decade, and
it's a long time to think around.
Yeah, but it was the right decade to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like from '95 to 2005, basically.
Yeah.
And then about 2005, I was like, okay, I have to get serious and do something here. So, right before 2005, I actually went down to LA, and I thought about buying cabs down there, because at that time you couldn't buy them in San Francisco. I didn't like the system in LA because it was a franchise system.
Mm-hmm.
So you never really owned the cab. You would just buy a permit that has to go with one brand of cab. So it just made I was like, I'm not doing that. And then
well, but it's not a permit, isn't it? Isn't it a share in
it's
the
a share in the
company, right?
Basically, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten that. Yeah, that's what it was. It was a share in the company, and so I was like, I'm not going to do that, and because you don't control your fate at that point. So I came back up here, and said, well, I'm just going to get into. I can run a cab company.
Well, I mean, just to go back to, you do control it, but you just don't have.
Well, you don't.
It's not. You're not getting it from the city.
No, but you
right?
can't. You can't. You're under the control of that co-op. And so if you come to odds with that co-op, for example, like, I mean, even what you can sell it for is based on what the co-op's rules are, bylaws, and whatever, right?
Right, in the business relationship, but in
Yeah.
conducting your business, you're free to do what you want at the end of the day. With the
Not as I understood it, or at least not that I was comfortable with.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't want everybody else to having a say in how I'm going to run my business.
yeah.
You know, if I wanted to do that, if I wanted to get into it, something like that, I'd get a McDonald's.
So these are basically these are the rules. What you're talking about are the rules that the co-op would set for its members.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Like this is the business agreement
Yeah.
that we've got. You own a share in the co-op. You're an owner, but these are the rules you have to abide by.
Hmm.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. And ironically, so I decided to get into management somehow, and so I just kind of, there was a little startup cab company here,
Mhm.
scrappy little outfit, Green Cab, that was a driver co-op.
Yeah.
And I just pestered them until they let me manage the company.
Now, did you start driving, or did you just come straight to managing?
I went there and drove, and it was funny because the shifts were horrible.
Mhm.
It was like the worst possible shifts. And I remember thinking to myself, either I'm a genius or I'm an idiot. And it was really hard to do, actually, because the shifts were so bad. And then, and fortunately, I didn't need the money because I wasn't making any.
Was the shift bad because you couldn't because it was just bad time? Like you were getting a
Bad
day shift and
day
like a
shifts.
Tuesday day shift or something like that. That's all you could
Yeah.
get from them. Okay.
Yeah, and like exactly a Tuesday day shift, and you know, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then just try to drive here and there or something. And it wasn't like, you know, the big cab companies back then. You could just walk in any time of day and go to work. They always
Yeah.
had hundreds of cars, you know, going in and out throughout the day. But this was, they only had, I think, 3 cabs at that time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so eventually they said, okay, well, you know, we'll work with you, and you can manage the company. And so I got a reputation for myself there because I was really upsetting the biggest company. It was Yellow Cab, but it wasn't you. There was the old Yellow Cab.
When they were yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And they had been trying to shut that little tiny company down because they considered it a threat because it was this new co-op and they might take medallions away from Yellow Cab. And actually, in fact, they did get medallions from Yellow Cab. That was how they sued this medallion holder, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the settlement was that they had to move those medallions from Yellow Cab to Green Cab.
Oh,
to start
that's
the
right.
company.
I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember
Yeah.
that.
So Yellow Cab just had a vengeance out for them.
Yeah.
So they were getting beat up pretty bad. Yellow Cab literally had like huge posters like on their walls, like "Don't go drive a green cab," which I thought was hilarious because it's like, what do you want? Your drivers are all upset with you, and you're telling them, "Don't go drive a green cab." That's the first thing they're going to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the. I don't know, not to make anybody feel bad, but that wasn't the best idea. But yeah, so I did that for like 2.5 years, and then these other guys wanted to buy DeSoto Cab
Mhm.
at that time, which was struggling really bad, and I didn't. Frankly, I didn't want them to buy it because I was planning on raiding their medallions. I had already started like circling, you know, like a vulture over the upcoming.
Which I
anticipated-
gotta say, man, it's like at that time. This was probably what 2009 or 10.
This would have been, yeah,
maybe a
you're
little bit
spot on.
later?
Maybe no, it was 2009, I think,
Yeah.
because I was expecting them to shut their doors in June.
Which at that time, like, it's kind of hard to screw up in the cab business, to screw up a cab company.
Yeah, but they were very successful at that.
They did a great job of
Yeah,
that.
they did everything wrong that you could possibly do.
Oh man, like there was, yeah. I mean, that was before Uber and Lyft. That was before the medallion sales, and like everybody was making money hand over fist.
Yeah, there was so much cash that people literally were losing count of it. There was, in fact, when we finally did take over that company, when I went to work for those guys and helped them to reestablish that company, but there was a safe in my office, a big vault, and no one had the combination for it. Finally, one day, like after being there 6 or 7 months, I found somehow the combination for the vault, and I opened it.
Did you
And
open it up one day at night and just take whatever was in there and not
there
tell
was a
anybody?
stack of cash in there. There was literally,
Jesus
they
Christ.
forgot. There was a stack of cash. Nobody, when they left the company,
Just
nobody took it.
like 10, 15 grand, something like that, maybe.
It was like, yeah, more like 10, well
Yeah.
under 10. And then there was actually, we had the shop, and we had someone running the shop, and one of the things I did, I started servicing outside cars. We
Yeah.
were just servicing our own. And we're like, where's all the money? We're like losing 100 grand a month from the shop. Like, what's going on? So after like 3 months, you know, they finally fired, the owners finally decided to fire the person that was running the shop. And I go in there and I'm like organizing and cleaning it up. And there's a shoebox like behind her desk, behind her chair. And I go through it and it's all these checks that people had written to pay for their service that she never ever deposited.
Jesus.
So, you know, I'm like, so we have business.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just not cashing the checks.
Yes. Well, I saw similar stuff after we bought Yellow's assets. I saw similar things, man. Like they had 2 copiers. I don't know if I told you this. They had 2 massive copiers. One of them was color, one of them was black and white. And they were leasing these and paying $5,000 a month to lease these 2 copiers. They could have bought one that had, the reason they had 2 was the color one was slow and they wanted a faster one for black and white. And so they have these 2 massive, like these Xerox work centers that take up, you know, it's like 4 feet. This thing is like 3 or 4 feet wide. They had 2 of those sitting in their copy room.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we canceled that lease. I bought one for $4,000 and then saved $5 grand a month.
And this is how I bought my house.
This is how I can afford my house. Exactly. That's exactly right.
No, it's mind blowing. Oh, and we had, and this was, you know, like you said, it was 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when, you know, things like the yellow pages, they dropped off usefulness.
Oh, yeah.
Big time at that point. And so I told our staff, I said, hey, cut all the yellow pages ads. Don't renew any of them. They said, cut them completely with maybe a small one? No, just nothing.
Yeah.
We don't need it. No one's going to the phone book looking for a cab. And if you remember, there were like, 5 or 6 different yellow pages at that point, because the copyright on the title, something got let go. So everyone was publishing one, and so the main one though, I remember the sales guy. He came in because he's like, "You guys canceled. And I had my, you know, kind of like a receptionist, more like an assistant, that she sat in front of my office. And I hear this guy yelling at her, and she opens my door, and she's like, hey, this guy, he won't go away. And I go, who is he? He's from the Yellow Pages. I said, what's he doing here? She says, he's upset because we canceled the ad. And at that time, I think we were getting the full pagers, you know,
Yeah.
or something like that. I don't even know. So he comes in, and he's a big guy, and he's furious, like livid, like coming over the desk almost. He's like, you can't cancel. We've had this ad for, you know. I go, yeah, I can. I'm not renewing.
Yeah.
He goes, are you crazy? I go, no. Are you crazy? What are you storming in here? You're going to bully me into like keeping the ad in the Yellow Pages? and I said, am I seriously going to have to leave my own office? And the guy, I mean, I felt kind of bad for him because he was clearly very, very upset. I mean, but I was like, I can't just have an ad in here because it upsets you.
Yeah.
If I cancel it. This is a business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything out of this. I could just give my drivers the money I'm paying you, okay? Just
I remember dealing with the same thing. Like they want us, they were like coming to us and saying, "Oh, we'll post on our website now," and da da da. I'm just like, no, like that's it.
No.
The Yellow Pages are done.
Yeah.
Sorry, you know, it's all websites and Yelp and everything nowadays. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
spend the money?
and this was 13 years ago now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and look how much the transportation industry has changed in 13 years from there.
Yeah. So how long did you manage at DeSoto?
2.5 years.
Okay.
And then I got up and walked out, literally.
Yeah.
It was going well until it wasn't. Yeah. I mean, I did a good job. That was not the issue. I just didn't like the direction they were going.
Yeah.
And I didn't want, I had built up a reputation, and that's my resume. And so, I was like, okay. And frankly, I had hired someone else to replace me because, and I used to tell everyone, I said, don't just, because the official role was a general manager. And so what would happen at cab companies in San Francisco at that time, and around a lot of the country actually, people would, jockey to get that general manager seat or president seat, and then they would just do everything they could to hold that seat almost like a politician for the rest of their life. And that was also part of the reason why the cab industry was in such a state, because these people, they were holding on these seats more like a politician than actually trying to make the company better. They're trying to keep everyone happy so they can just keep that job.
I mean, so I think there are two guys that I'd give a lot of credit to, and those guys are probably Jimmy Steele and Nate Dwyer, because they did a great job building Yellow Cab back then, especially Jimmy Steele. Like, he set a really good, from what I understand, he set a really good precedent in terms of how a cab company should be run. And then Nate took over after him, and he continued it. Despite what you may think of them, like, a lot of people have opinions about Nate, and he's passed. I think he passed away like last year. But in terms of running that business, I think they ran it really, really well.
I mean, yeah, especially, I would say, because when I came to California, one of the, in 93 or 94, I went on a tour of their company. And it was like, wow, this is great, And the cab industry, and especially Yellow Cab back then, I mean, it was really well run. They definitely got to a point, a few years later, where things really started coming unraveled. And they started, I think that the mistake that they made was they started paying attention to national trends instead of just doing what they do well. Because they started, following the lead of, like taxi association membership, and doing things that, taking these shortcuts, and where you it's almost like you're cannibalizing yourself, your own business in a way. And I think that was a big mistake.
Just because you're spending time on these other things that don't have an direct impact on the business?
They have a short-term impact, right?
Yeah.
So they appear to have a short-term positive impact, but your long-term, you're really just cannibalizing yourself. And an example of that was, I think they made a mistake. I mean, it's the industry model now for the most part, but when they started letting drivers have their own cars, buy their own cars, back then, I think that was really when the company started to build its own obstacles. Because what happened, because people don't realize, at that time, Yellow Cab literally bought all the cars. They owned all the cars. And even if you owned your own medallion, you gave your medallion to them, and they put it in a car. And you didn't even get to choose which car you get to drive. You drive whatever they gave you. And they would replace 1/3 of the cars every year with brand new taxi cabs.
Right.
So basically every 3 years you'd have new cabs. 1/3 of the fleet would be replaced every 3 years. So the oldest cabs were 3 years old, except for like a spare cab. And they just controlled the inventory, and everybody went out and they drove their shifts, whether they were an owner or they were a driver, whatever they were, they paid their lease. What happened when they started letting people come in and buy their own car and lease the medallion from the cab company is that meant that it became that much harder for them to get more medallions, because now the drivers had way too much control, because they have the car, and they have the medallion, and when you go to say, hey, we want more medallions from the city because we need more cabs, before you just had the lease drivers and their organization saying, well, we don't want more cabs, but the cab company was like, hey, I have, for every 100 drivers I have working, I have 25 that want to work, so I can show you I need more medallions, and I have this many calls that aren't getting answered.
Right.
But now you've got the drivers owning the car, their own car. So you don't have as many drivers waiting for a cab anymore because they're just getting their own car, and then they're splitting it with another driver or two.
Yeah.
And then they also don't want to service the the high volume rides, like the short trips and all of this kind of stuff. They want to go to the airport. They don't want to put wear and tear on their car, this kind of thing. And so it kind of gets in its own way. And so I understand in other markets, and I understand, like, there's no way I would come into the cab industry today and say
Yeah.
I'm going to own all the cars.
Yeah.
Because you're just, unless I was insanely well capitalized and was, hey, I want to try this business model and I got this idea. And some people, I mean, Alto is doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
Captain is doing that. They're, and they're having some success with it. But, yeah, the point is, I think at that time, those were poor decisions. I think they should have focused on the integrity of the industry and keeping it concrete and solid as much as possible. And then the other thing, too, is the industry became so focused on keeping other people out, just generally speaking, that they tied their own hands behind their back, in my opinion.
I mean, I think the biggest thing was the opposition to new medallions. Like, we had the last big infusion of medallions was like when Willie Brown put out 400 in the 90s, like the mid to late 90s, and that's it. And then you got to, like, I think with the S medallions, we ended up at, like, what was it, like 2,000 or maybe 3,000 at the height? I don't even think it was that high.
No.
And we could have,
No.
like I said, we could have easily used 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, easy. Well, you look at Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So Las Vegas, up until now, and even now, they still don't allow the drivers to buy their own vehicles. They have leasing, but they don't have it like that model that I just explained about Yellow Cab. But the medallions are all controlled by the cab companies.
Yeah.
And so they just go to the city or to the taxi authority and say, we need more medallions.
And they get them.
And and if the entire industry doesn't agree on it, then they don't. But I mean, at the moment now, they have plenty of medallions. They just need drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've never had a shortage of medallions in Las Vegas. If you're on the Strip, I mean, other than there being some sort of traffic or an event that's kind of blockading everything, cabs are there.
Yeah.
You have cabs at the airport. You want to go between the Strip and the airport, there's nothing better than a cab in Las Vegas.
You're right, and it's all tied in, right? The casinos want there to be enough cabs. Everybody there wants there to be enough cabs because it's all based on tourism, and there's here it's more of a traditional city where a lot of competing interests.
But they had the same thing there, where the drivers, the driver organizations, they would balk every time the cab companies wanted more cabs, but the cab companies were able to show the data. Like you say, the resorts and the airports say, hey, we're running out of cabs at this time, or Vegas is that they had that right, and they stuck with that, and I think that was good. I think that if I think San Francisco at that time, in the '90s, that was a pivotal time for the industry in San Francisco, and I think if they had focused on just expanding rather than trying to find ways to not spend money.
Yeah.
I think that would have been probably.
It would have changed everything.
Yeah.
Instead of there being 1,500 or 2,000 cabs, now there are 4,000 cabs.
Yeah.
Okay. You have that many more drivers. The guys who are behaving badly with the customers all of a sudden don't have the ability to do that because there's going to be another cab right behind them, right? And the customer's going to, the customer has a little bit more choice. And he can't pick and choose the rides that he wants to take. He can't disregard certain customers. He can't treat customers a certain way. It would have changed everything, and everybody would have made money.
Yeah.
Everybody would have been the public would have been served better.
I mean, I drove a yellow cab in San Francisco in '95, '96.
Yeah.
It was all cash, and I was making $60,000 a year in cash.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you convert that to today's money.
Yeah, that's probably.
There were guys literally that would come and they live in a.
That's like 100. Probably it's probably like 120 or 150 grand nowadays.
Oh yeah, I think I calculated it a few months ago, and I think it was close to like 150.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all cash though. And the thing is that there was a handful of drivers that would they'd come in, they'd live in a van for like 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
save every penny they made, and just go buy a house for cash.
Like here or
Here.
back where they?
No,
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you could buy a house for $250.
That's true. Yeah, times were very, very different back then, man.
Yeah.
Dude, we have cab drivers who own buildings in downtown.
Yeah.
I have one cab driver, like he owns a building, or he's a partner in a building like south of Market.
Yeah.
And it's like this was, and no wonder people like you always hear stories of, oh, I started when I was in college just to make ends meet, and then here I am 20 years later. Well, it's because it's a really good way to make money, or was, you know. So.
Yeah, and so it occurred to me too. The other thing I forgot that was a huge game changer. No one ever brings it up in
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. Was when they started requiring the medallion holders to drive their cabs.
How do you think that changed the game?
Because they took up all those good shifts.
That's true.
Yeah, and remember the cab company. It became about making the medallion holder happy.
Oh, dude.
Before you never saw the medallion holder. You didn't want to see the medallion holder. You just gave them a check every month, you know, and you filled that cab with people, with drivers, and you'd get those drivers out and you keep those cars 24 hours a day, and it was very systematic. Car comes in, car goes out, in and out, in and out. You get same amount of cabs on the road 24 hours a day.
Yep.
And then when it became about, oh, the medallion owner wants to drive this shift, and now so you displaced all these drivers, and then they start leasing. Like I said, where you brought your own car.
Well, what would happen was the driver, like, okay, this is your cab from, Sunday to Thursday, but the medallion holder is going to drive Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. Which
You know what I
Fridays
mean?
and Saturdays, I mean, those were like insane shifts.
Yeah, like I was saying, like you could make $600
Yeah.
on a Friday night,
Yeah.
$500 on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you could work, I don't know, you could work part-time in this industry and make ends meet back then, easily.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what I mean by taking shortcuts and like figuring out how to, or making these poor decisions, and that was, I remember, like I was, like I said, I drove a yellow cab in '95, and I remember the taxi workers union, they got this thing to make the medallion holders have to drive their cabs, and it's like all of a sudden I couldn't get out, it was like I couldn't get a shift, and I was like, what?
What
This
happened?
is supposed to be working for me. It's not working for me. This is
Yeah.
doing the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't get to work when I want.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to work when I want.
What was your strategy when you go to work?
Oh, I was a beast. I mean, I would go into yellow. I'd get in a car. I would just take whatever they had.
Yeah.
I didn't care. And I remember guys would be all picky. I'm like, the oldest car is 3 years old. What's the big deal? Just get one. And I would take the car and I would pull out of the yard, and I'd go straight down Cesar Chavez and make a right on Mission.
I think a lot of guys did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd start right away. And then
Would you always get somebody on mission?
100% of the time. Yeah. Yeah. That's how also I knew that started to change over the years. But I remember when I started too, when I was taking the training at Yellow Cab,
Mm-hmm.
they said, never pick up south of Cesar Chavez. They called it Army Street then.
Right.
Never pick up south of Army Street.
Why not?
It was dangerous.
No.
Yeah. They would just flat out tell you, don't go south
Outer
of
Mission.
Army Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Bernal Heights. And I remember we had these old Gandalf computers, and I think Bernal Heights was zone 39. And you'd see like the whole city. We'd have the zone maps for the dispatch. And the city's got these tiny, tiny little zones, and then you get south of Cesar Chavez is like one big zone.
It's just the forbidden zone.
Yeah,
Everybody stay out of here. The air is poison. You're gonna die if you cross the border. It's just like it's dystopian sci-fi.
Yes. And it was so blatantly wrong, but I mean that's what they did.
Well,
obviously.
it's an inherently dangerous business, man.
Oh, back
like
then it was. I think one year there was in San Francisco 5 or 6 drivers killed in 1 year.
Wow.
When I was driving.
Wow.
Yeah, killed, not robbed. And robberies were like such an regular occurrence.
Well, we didn't have cameras,
No.
right? You didn't have cell phones the way you have now. You're driving around with cash. You're fully exposed. You're not like at a hotel. You're not like a bellman at a hotel or a bartender or a waiter, where you might have some cash on you, but you're protected. You're exposed. You're fully exposed.
Yeah.
It's a tough. It still is a tough business, man. Like you still have guys like. We have stories. I've heard stories of drivers getting bleach or acid thrown in their face. You know what I mean? Or if they do, this is the ultimate knucklehead move. Is you're in a bad neighborhood, the guy's trying to run out on you, and you go chase him down. Like, come on, man. You know, the minute you turn that corner, there's going to be 3 or 4 other buddies that are of his that are waiting for you right there. It's just tough. It's a tough business no matter how you slice or dice it.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that element of risk.
Yeah. No, I remember having rides where I was just terrified.
Yeah.
And then other ones, where I'd get full. I mean, I had altercations. I had all kinds of stuff.
How would you handle those situations?
They were all. It would just depended. I mean, if I was outnumbered, I just.
Yeah.
But I had a guy one time. I'll tell this one. So I'm coming up California Street. It's nighttime. It's foggy, and Huntington Park there by Grace Cathedral.
Yeah.
This guy comes running out of the park. He's waving at me, and it's dark. You can't really see. So he comes and he gets in. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's disheveled. I'm like, okay. So I go, where are you going? And he's like, 14th and Noe. I'm like, oh, that's a safe neighborhood. You know? So I get to 14th and Noe, and my cab had one of those partitions in it.
Okay.
And he's leaning up, and because he looked so sketchy, I actually had closed the partition because I'm like, this guy's a little flaky. And so I think I closed it as we're pulling up. Like I'm pulling up, and I kind of slid it closed, and I look back at him, turn on the interior light, and he just leans up against it and is staring at me. And whatever it said on the meter, and he goes, I have a gun. And
He just told you I have a gun.
Yeah, and I just look at him, and he goes, I go, yeah, so? He's like, well, give me the money, man. And I said, no. And he goes, hey, man. I said, hey, listen, I'm giving you a chance to just get out of the car and walk away. And he goes, what? And he goes, motherfucker, if I wanted to get out of the car, I would have got out of the fucking car. And I said, I'm telling you, I'm giving you a chance to just get out of the car and walk away. And he looks around, he looks at me, he looks around, and he gets out of the car and he slams the door shut and walks off. And then I'm like, what the fuck did I just do?
That was fucking ballsy, man.
Right? So then I'm like shaking. So I go over to, I just start driving slow. I'm like, should I call the police? What should I do? And so I drive slow, and I see a payphone. So I pull over to the payphone, and I call my girlfriend. I'm like, some guy just tried to rob me, man. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I go, holy shit, he's walking by right now. And he looks at me, I'm looking at him. We're just like looking at each other. And he walks by, and he just keeps walking. And I said, yeah, he just walked by.
Jesus. He didn't give it another shot? Now that you're out of the cab, away from the partition, there's no... Well, he just lacked conviction. That's all it was. He needs to be more determined about what he wants out of his interactions.
Yeah. I mean, but that, that was like, there's so many funny stories, though, that just, eventually, that's one reason I wanted to stop driving, was because I figured I'd pushed my luck so far. Because I was one of those guys who pick up just about everybody.
Yeah.
I was not one of those guys that was going around like, oh, I'm not going to this neighborhood. I remember taking a ride into the, I think it's called the Iron Triangle in Richmond one night. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. There were kids in the road with bats, swinging bats at the car. And I was just driving through.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like they were confronting me. I think they were swinging bats at anything.
Anything that drove through, yes.
It's just like, and I remember the first time.
Don't take it personal. We're doing this to everybody.
Yeah, we're doing it to everybody. And I remember just being in some neighborhoods, and it was just, I was like, this is like Mad Max. This is crazy. But I eventually got to a point. And then I drove in L.A., because when I was thinking about buying a cab down there, I partnered up with one guy, and we leased a yellow cab. And I worked everywhere. I'd work all night. Compton, Watts, all of it, South Central. Yeah, I changed cars in South Central. The guy that I leased the cab with, he lived in South Central. And I figured out a way, because they leased the cab for a certain fee for the week.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I wanted to pay as little as possible of that share.
Yeah.
So I told the guy, I said, I'll go to work at 10 o'clock at night
Uh-huh.
and drive until 10 in the morning. And he's like, oh, I'll take that, you know. So I'm going down there in South Central and, you know.
But I'm only going to pay you this much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was only like paying like $250 a week.
Oh, wow. What was the full lease on the cab back then?
Probably like $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah, and I just worked the streets at night. There were hardly any cabs in LA at night that late because it was terrifying.
Wow.
It was scary.
Did you, I mean, you wouldn't take any safety precautions at all? You were just kind of...
Well, the cabs in LA at that time all had the
partitions, right? And the partitions in San Francisco, we only had them for like a few years, I think.
Yeah, they were only in a few cabs.
Yeah.
They were in every vehicle in LA.
Yeah, LA and New York, and there's a lot of cities had those, but we just didn't.
I just had I grew up in Chicago in the 70s, and I just didn't get scared like most people did.
Yeah.
And
had you dealt with this kind of stuff before? A lot? Like, were you used to it?
As a school kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the neighborhood. And then I just had the street smarts, the sensibilities to know, like, oh, I can get out of this, or I can't get out of this, or I need to get out of this now, or avoid it or something. And then I also just, I don't know, just always thinking on my toes. And then the cops in LA were, at that time, they were real wise about what was going on with cabs. And so, like, if you need, I don't know, I felt like I was able to flag down cops pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And
like they were looking out for you guys,
yeah.
is what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes at night, no exaggeration, I mean, sometimes I'd be driving someone and cops would just come alongside the cab and turn on their spotlight and look to see who's in the back.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Man,
awesome.
I mean, I had some hardcore dudes, for sure. But I had it's weird though, whenever I called the cops though, I could never get one. I was able to flag them down.
They're there when you don't need them, but when you need them, they don't show up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had that happen in San Francisco once. I got a guy pulled a gun on me out by Stonestown one night. He didn't have enough money for the fare, and I think I did something. I didn't get out and go after him.
Yeah.
But I knew where he was.
Yeah.
And he just showed me the gun and went back inside. And I called the cops. I'm like, well, I know where he is. He's right there. And I sat there for 45 minutes. And
Nobody came.
I'm stupid. Why am I sitting here? I could have just left.
You could have left and got another couple of fares and made up for whatever you lost there.
But yeah, the industry, yeah. So, yeah. But, yeah, now I'm more into the, obviously the other side of the industry. Like, I'm not even working for a cab company anymore. I'm
Right.
working for a tech company.
How do you like it better?
I love it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I love it because the thing is I get to use the wisdom I've acquired from being in the industry for so long and apply it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's education is important, but wisdom is education with experience.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as education tells you in theory what things are, but you don't know how things are until you experience it yourself. Then you truly know, right? Then you can say that I know this because you've experienced it, you've felt it. There's the emotions behind it. There's the emotions behind experiencing it, and then what they tell you and what you learn in school is always it stays theoretical until you actually put it into practice somehow, and you have to do that. You have to do the latter part, and that's why so many people say that's why you get people who advocate for not going to school. It's like you're going to learn this stuff. Just by doing it, you're going to learn it. You're going to figure it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in life that you just learn by doing them.
Yeah.
You can't, Yeah, and I think, I mean, I definitely have a good sense of like, oh, this is going to, I'm what's the word? I can't think of what it's called now.
What is it?
But anyway, it's called what is it? Oh my God.
Sixth Sense?
Critical thinker.
Oh, okay.
I'm a critical thinker.
Okay.
So it's like, but I'm tenacious and I have a positive outlook. So it's like, I'm like, okay, I want to do this, but I can usually foresee the problems before they happen. And I'm also really good at figuring out, I'm a really good strategist. So I'm also really good at learning what everyone else is doing.
Well, when you get to I think when you get to managing or owning a company, or doing what you do in sales, you have to start playing. You got to start playing like 4D chess. And you got to think 1, 2, 3, 4 moves ahead, and figure out how to cut those moves, how to deal with those moves ahead, like right now,
Yeah.
before they happen.
Yeah.
With every aspect of the business. I think when it's dealing with competitors, when it's dealing with regulators, when it's dealing with anything, you just gotta think way ahead and figure those things out before they come to. And that's where having the vision and the critical thinking, helps.
Yeah, and I think if I have a weakness in terms of like business, it's like I've never done anything that loses money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like the concept of like a startup, like you say, is like, well, we're going to lose money for 10 years.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it. I understand how it works. But I mean, like I said, I bought my first medallion for $700.
Yeah.
And then I went out, I studied for like 2 months at the library about how to run a cab company. I'd get every piece of literature, newspaper article, magazine article about taxis. Went through the phone books from all the major cities to see what the names of the cab companies were. And I was like, oh, so
To figure out what to name yours.
yeah. And so, and I get it, and then I do all that, and I buy a car at the auction, and I paint it, and I put it out on the road, and I'm like, okay, there's my new cab, and I went out and started making money. Then I'd take that money and put it in, and I didn't have any loans. To this day, I don't have any debt. I have no debt.
Well, everything you just described comes from. I think that's the kind of experience you get when you're listening to your gut, and you're congruent with yourself, and you're doing what you want to do, right? Because the drive, when you're doing something that you want to do, the drive and the motivation and the problem solving and everything comes automatically, because you're invested in yourself, and all of that comes from within. Like there's a drive behind that's pushing you, and it's like, okay, well, if I want to do X, Y, and Z, I got to do 1, 2, 3 first.
Yeah.
And you just figure things out because the drive is automatically there. That's awesome, man. I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No. I mean, when you were, I use credit cards, but I pay the credit card every day.
Yeah.
Whatever the balance is from the day before, I pay it the next day. When you were setting up at the start of this, that's what I was doing on my phone. I was like,
Just
okay,
paying your bills.
Paying, yeah. I was like, oh, I spent this on yesterday. Just paid it.
Yeah. That's. Where do you think? Have you been following the autonomous vehicle stuff?
Oh, way like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your take?
It's a shit show. I mean, talk about
It is.
It's never going to make money.
You don't think so?
No.
Why not?
Not in the scale that they're presenting it. It's going to do well for fixed route. Like they just did that new autonomous shuttle on Treasure Island.
Okay.
That's a perfect application for it. You have a fixed route, flat island.
Yeah.
It just picks up people. It's a controlled environment.
It knows the turns. It knows the terrain. It knows where to stop.
Yeah.
It knows where to go. It knows all the speeds.
And the most important thing, you need limited resources to keep that thing running, right?
Right.
If you try to do robo-taxis in a city like San Francisco on a scale where anyone can ride in one, you would be saving money if you just had somebody riding in that car and you paid them per the hour than if you had the infrastructure to support that car. Because the vandalism, the crime.
The Konings were hilarious, by the way.
They're still doing them.
Yeah.
I was just reading this morning. They're still doing them. They're going strong. It's becoming a popular thing to do. Have you seen people jumping in front of them now?
No.
To stop them on purpose?
No.
I think it's funny. People just...
All it takes, man, is for that algorithm to go off by just a little bit, and you're roadkill. I don't understand where the...
What was the... There was a bunch of them stuck the other day.
Outside lands.
Yeah, that whole thing was so funny because they blamed outside lands for it, but it's 6.5 miles from outside lands, basically. It was in North Beach.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or it's like 5 miles, if I'm being generous. But It had nothing to do with outside lands. It was on Grant Street, North Beach, and it turned and they tried to blame the data connection. They
Right.
said the
All
data
the all the
yeah.
all the bandwidth was sucked up by the
Yeah.
attendees of the concert.
Which whoever said that, they need to be advised. Keep your mouth shut until you absolutely know what you should say, because that just made it worse, right? Because if it is the data connection, you're saying that if you don't have a good cell phone service,
These cars are
the
just
car-
bricks. Yeah.
But they did that, and then, but then they come out later and they say, well, actually, what happened was someone stopped one of the cars, like I was saying. They just trying to, kind of a form of vandalism, or I don't know.
Protest.
Protest, yeah. And it caused all the cars to get stuck.
Jeez.
You know, and so, and if, I don't know if you saw the videos of that traffic jam.
No.
It evolved into, like, you know, basically 3 or 4 blocks of gridlock because no one could get through. You know how narrow
Yeah.
the streets are.
Yeah. I do.
There's no place to pass. And the thing is like they go, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal, but the fire department's right. Because if there was, that's a nightlife area. If there was a shooting in there, if there was something, they couldn't get to it.
If there was a burning building,
Mhm.
and the fire department needs to get there,
Which happens a lot in San Francisco. You have the density.
they got to
Things
take
catch
a,
on
a
fire.
10-minute detour to get to that burning building when every minute counts.
Yeah, no, that's a big problem. But I think that you know, I've said it from the get-go. I've said crime is going to be the number one problem they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I know. It's the real world. Like, okay, you book one of these rides. It pulls up, and then somebody got sick in the back seat. What are you gonna do about it? Okay, next one.
Well, you're not going to have someone sitting there watching the camera.
No.
So you're not going to know until somebody says something about it. So the
Right.
person who got sick, they're not going to say anything because
Yeah.
they don't want to pay for the cleanup fee.
They're probably drunk anyways. They're incapable of saying anything.
So the next person gets in, and then maybe they say, hey, I'm not getting in this car, there's vomit in here. Or they say, well, I don't want to report it because I don't want to get charged with vomiting in the car myself.
It's something to deal with.
it's I mean, that's just one, you know, and the thing, what they're brilliant at is, you know, someone will make something like a comment like that, like, well, you know, if people get sick in the car, well, we have a solution for that.
Right.
Well, we have a solution for this. Yeah, you probably do in the perfect scenario, but accumulatively across the board, you don't have a solution because there is no one scenario. I mean, it happened to me. I can think right now, just when I drove cab 2 times, someone got sick in the back of the cab. I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I had no clue. And I remember someone got in the, you know, I stopped, they opened the back door, and the guy just starts yelling at me. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, God, you know, there's this vomit all over the place.
Jeez.
And I'm like, I didn't even know about that. And I'm pretty sure I had 2 or 3 rides in between that didn't even say anything.
Yeah, I remember the few times that I did drive, I took a guy from the city down to Daly City, and on the 101 South, like I could tell he was just he had too much and he was sick, and I opened the window for him to get him some fresh air, and then, you know, on the 101 his head's out the window and he's just blowing chunks, and I thought I had automatically assumed that the car was fine.
Yeah.
Like it just hit the road, and then I keep driving. I don't think I got any more fares that night for obvious reasons. But then I get to the gas station. I didn't even notice the gas station because it was on the passenger side. Someone was like, "Hey, there's puke all over the side of your car."
Yeah.
And I look over, and yeah, the whole side of the car is puke. Yeah.
Oh, I had a guy like shit himself on purpose. And
On
spread
purpose?
the shit all over the back of the cab.
Oh,
and
my
and
God,
I was
man.
telling my mom was asking me about the robo-taxis. I said, and that's with somebody driving the car.
Yeah, that's when there's somebody there that
He did that with someone driving
they
the car.
have no shame when there's other human being there. Imagine when there's no one.
Yeah. I mean, stuff happens.
I mean, yeah, they'll figure that out, man. They're gonna figure something out because I think they're so. It seems like they're kind of at the point of no return though, because they've invested hundreds of billions, and
Well, GM is, you know, a struggling company. I mean, GM and Ford, they're both struggling. If it wasn't for pickup trucks,
you think so?
yeah. It's the Silverado and the GMC pickup, and for Ford it's the F-150. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they don't even make sedans anymore. They stopped making sedans.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Taurus is, or not the Taurus. Was it the Taurus? Yeah, the Taurus. The Ford
Fusion.
Taurus. The Fusion.
No.
That's right. The Fusion.
Ford stopped making sedans completely.
Really?
Yeah. SUVs and pickups. That's it.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, look at the website.
No way.
Sedans, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Their stock is like, I mean, I don't know what it is now. I mean, last time I looked, it's probably like a couple of years ago. It's like
Well,
$11.
So okay. So speaking of, don't you think that the Tesla self-driving is going to be different? Because they're doing it completely differently.
So I think it's, the thing is, for a personal vehicle, it's different
Yeah.
because you have someone in the car.
But there is intent. I think
Yeah.
there is intent to like your Tesla takes you to work,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have an option of putting it to work.
I mean, that's a futurist kind of thing. I don't believe it because there's a number of reasons, right? First of all, nobody wants to share anything, especially if they sunk a bunch of money into it.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't agree with that. People are sharing their homes. People are sharing their cars. People are.
Not so much, really.
You don't think so?
No. If you, like, there's Get Around, right?
Yeah.
That's the car share.
Right.
Most of those cars are owned by fleets now.
Yeah. Not
People-
personal.
Yeah. And there was just a
That's
thing in
true.
the Wall Street Journal about it, actually, that there's people that own as many as like 100 cars.
Yeah. Last time I
running a
rented
full-time
something,
business.
I rented a car from Turo.
Yeah.
It was a guy that had 4 or 5 cars that he's renting
Yeah.
on there. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the car that he just driving
No,
around.
that's not his. No, not the one he takes his kids to school in.
Yeah, and you even see that now with Uber. They're renting cars to drive Uber, or they're not using their personal car. Maybe somebody who's just, they get a car for Uber,
Right.
but you typically don't get. I mean, maybe in some smaller cities, smaller markets, but in big cities, I mean, they're taxis.
Okay, so fine. So you're not going to share your personal Tesla, but I'm going to go buy a fleet of 10 Teslas, and they're automatically they're self-driving, and they're out there
Yeah.
transporting people.
It's the same as Get Around, though. I mean, other than the fact that the car can drive itself.
Well, what I'm
But
saying
you're
is
that the car would drive itself to
what
the
I'm saying
renter
is
or
in the
something.
context of autonomous vehicles
Yeah.
and the problems, the clusterfuck that they currently are. Could something like Tesla's full self-driving
I see what you're saying.
do better?
Well, I mean, it goes back to, I think, I still keep the same point. There's going to be someone in that car, in the driver's seat. So, they'll be able to adjust for whatever scenario, whatever they come across. I mean, we talked about like how there's people throwing themselves in front of the robo-taxis to stop them, right?
Mhm.
If somebody jumps out in front of you and you're sitting in the driver's seat, you're like, I'm going to go around this.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping. So, and then you got to think too, we're looking at this from California, right? California, I mean, despite what you see on the news and everything, the bulk of California is pretty safe.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world is not like the United States,
No. And in what sense?
Well, I mean, you have a problem in a lot of other countries, developing nations, or even just, even parts of Europe. You have. I was watching in like Eastern Europe, on YouTube, traveling around. You have to have a guide because there's you get the guys on the side of the road with a machine gun.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, where are you going? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
What are you in town for?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, the autonomous vehicles are not going to be able to be everywhere. And you don't have the same road systems, right? You have roads that are, I was just watching another one in India where there's a mountain road that's all paved, but then the river has washed a part of it out. And so they're all out there like, helping to get the cars through this thing. But it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future in that part of the world because they don't have the money to keep the roads up.
I think
So you can't scale it. You can only use them. They're never going to be as prevalent as a regular car.
globally, I would agree with you, but I think there are enough markets in the Western world that they get a return on their investment and then some, if they figured this out.
Yeah.
I just think so I was reading an article, I think it was yesterday, I was reading a tweet where this guy was explaining the Tesla full self-driving, and they're only using cameras, and what they're doing is they're taking the data from the drivers right? So the data, how the driver maneuvers the car and the situations that show up on the cameras. And then an AI is learning, okay, in these specific situations, I need to do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And so then the AI, and you're getting just millions and millions and millions of hours of footage and data on how to navigate the world, how a car navigates the world, how a human navigates the world in a car. And then whatever that is gets uploaded to each individual car. So it doesn't need the data, it doesn't need the cell service for the communication. It's got its directions uploaded to it, right? And it's learning from how human beings do it.
Right.
Which is, I mean, so it's not, and you're not, the difference is...
They have millions of more miles too than Waymo and
we've got millions of more miles,
yeah.
a lot more data to learn from. And the difference is with Cruise and Waymo, they have engineers coding how the car should react in different situations, right? And you're not 100% in the real world when you do that, right? You're still kind of thinking of it from a theoretical perspective, and you have to get that real world experience and adjust to that. Whereas Tesla's getting that right away.
Yeah.
So I think they'll solve it. I think they're going to be more successful than Cruise and Waymo. And I think you're going to have autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, I don't really doubt that there's going to be autonomy. I doubt some of the applications.
Yeah.
That they anticipate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the problem with these conversations, generally speaking, is if you say, for example, like electric vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. Electric, it's certainly an improvement over combustion, generally speaking, in the cities, right?
Right.
But does it solve every problem in the world? No.
No.
It creates some new problems.
Right.
And by the way, a car is still a car. It's still traffic.
Yeah.
It's still using tires. It's still, so it's still, I was commenting on this thing the other day, and they're like going on about how autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles are going to be the savior, and it's like, no, the two most sustainable modes of transportation are your 2 feet or a bicycle.
Yes.
Those are the two most sustainable forms of transportation.
Involves your 2 feet.
Yeah, and nothing else is going to change that at this moment. There is no electric vehicle that's going to be better than walking or taking a bike.
Yeah.
If you're talking about sustainability, and then the third one is trains.
Public transportation.
Public transportation.
Just mass transit. Yeah.
Mass transit.
Yep.
And everything else is just you're just playing with yourself. I mean, it's just like
yeah. I mean, you cannot beat the efficiency of putting 50 people on a bus and moving them all together.
No.
You can't.
No. And I mean, and then even, environmentally, the thing with, even the combustion vehicles at this point, they're becoming so efficient.
Oh, yeah.
They could be way more, except that it's what we're just saying. Ford, their money makers of F-150 truck.
Yeah.
My Volkswagen on a road trip, it has a 1.4 liter turbo. I'm getting 46 miles per gallon.
I drove a Camaro down to LA. It was like it was recent, like I think it was like a 2022 or something like that. I filled up once.
Yeah.
Which is your standard, and this is a sports car.
Yeah.
They're super efficient.
And you drove really slow, right?
Yes. Extremely slow. Extremely slow.
Right lane all the way.
The whole way, yeah. I didn't try to overtake any semis whatsoever. I love looking at the back of a semi on a 5-hour road trip. It's fantastic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But so basically, I mean, the ultimate point of the conversation is you don't think that anything's going to happen in the taxi industry because of this stuff.
I think it's good. I mean, it will, but I don't think it's going to. I don't think the robo-taxi is going to have the effect. And look, neither does Uber. Uber doesn't think it. Dara doesn't think it. Dara's. I was reading an interview with him the other day. He's like, It's going to be 10 years before we see any real effect from robo-taxis.
Yeah, it's always been 10 years out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's easy to say, right?
It's been 10 years out for 20 years.
If you say 50 years, everybody's going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. So you just say 10 years. Everything's 10 years. 10 years is easy.
Yeah.
10 years, I'm going to have this. I won't have this. I don't know. 10 years. Give me 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, anything can happen in 10 years. Yeah,
Yes.
that's true.
Will I still be married in 10 years? Of course. Absolutely, I will.
It's year 11. It's year 11 that's a bitch. Trust me, I know from experience.
Wisdom.
There you go. Oh, man.
Yeah. So no, I think the technology is going to evolve. And it's going to be useful. I think, like I said, I think the fixed route stuff is really and trucks on the highway,
Yeah.
transport, things like that. It's still though you're going to have issues, because of snow. The weather. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. I mean, we've all seen ice road truckers.
I actually haven't. I've never watched that.
Never? What?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's not a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everything you'd expect it to be.
Yeah.
It's trucks driving
Driving on ice.
on ice in the middle of nowhere in freezing cold weather.
Extremely dramatized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the chance of falling into the lake.
There you go.
It's about as unpleasant as
Which
you can
never
imagine.
happens. How often does that happen in the show?
I haven't watched enough. I've only
Yeah.
watched a few episodes.
Yeah. They're always about to drop.
It's usually
There's
when
always the danger of falling in the lake, but you never get the payoff.
Well, I've seen them get stuck, but I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. It's these kind of shows I watch when I'm in a hotel room. You're sitting there like, what's on
Yeah.
hotel TV?
What else, man?
I don't know. I mean, the future of the industry.
What do you think?
I think that the taxi industry is like I compare it to like the bodegas or gas stations, convenience stores.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think taxis are necessarily going to always be the most efficient or most cost effective, but there's always going to be a version of them. And it's like, you look at 7-Eleven, it's like, why is there a 7-Eleven?
Yeah. Why are they still
It's
around?
overpriced. Nothing in there is worth eating.
That's true.
But they're always busy. 24 hours a day.
Yeah. They're open. They don't have locks on
And
the
they're
doors.
all over the place.
Yeah.
You can walk from one to the other, right?
Yeah.
And some things just can't really be explained that easily.
Well, and Mark made a good point when I talked with him. You're always going to have the population of people that need a human being to help them out.
It works much better in some things.
Yeah, in certain ways it does. And I mean, frankly, that's the direction that a lot of the industry has gone nationally, anyways.
Yeah.
Like everybody pivoted to paratransit and assisted transportation, medical transportation. I mean, that's where Uber and Lyft are not good, and we're good. Everybody
You
just
can't,
onto
you
that.
can't rely on technology for everything.
No.
You really can't. I mean, there's certain things that you just, I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, you look at I'm just thinking like at home. It's like I went back to using a broom.
You have a Roomba?
I was going to get one at one point, and
Yeah.
I've got the Shark vacuum, and then I went back to using the broom. I'm like, it's just I can talk on the phone and sweep at the same time, and it actually gets stuff off the ground, And the Roombas, I see them. I mean, they're nice, they're cool. I can understand, the Roomba has its place. I think if I had like a family and a big house, and it's like you just let the thing run around all the time, that's one thing. But in my case, it takes me 10 minutes to sweep.
Yeah. Yeah. I just the process, the proceedings for the autonomous vehicles really bothered me, man. Because it's like anything with the PUC is just.
It's a rubber stamp.
It's
The PUC rubber stamps, and and so I want to be careful. So I don't want to talk too badly about any regulators.
Sure.
But I don't deal directly with the PUC typically. But I'll just say, if you look at how many people have died over the last 20 years from PUC-regulated businesses,
The number is high.
their track record is horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
the bulk of that's going to be, you've got.
you got
it's
the
gonna be
city of
PG&E.
Paradise, right,
Right.
burnt to the ground.
Right.
San Bruno exploded.
That's true.
And San Bruno's a major metropolitan area.
It is
it's
a
right in the
major.
middle. It's right
At the middle of the peninsula,
Yeah.
and you had this 50-foot flame, like it was
Yeah.
God's wrath
Yeah.
coming down all over the place. Like it was insane.
Yeah. Everyone thought a plane crashed from SFO
Yeah.
to the hill, and it's it's like a square mile.
Well, and then with the TNCs, they had. I remember before even the TNCs came out, I think they had something like 5 people in their enforcement unit for all of the limousines in California. And then you put Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
You regulate Uber and Lyft, and
The CPUC is really just an administrative body.
yeah,
They're not really a regulating body. They're administrative. That's all they are. They just administer the work, the
Yeah.
paperwork, and if they would just be honest and just say that,
mm-hmm.
at least at least then you go like, okay, this is an administrative thing. It's like when you buy a business license. Right?
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
get your business license. They're not in charge of making sure your business is safe. But CPUC doesn't actively. I mean, they probably do some active work, but not a lot.
Yeah.
They certainly don't have enough staff to do it. I mean, before there was Uber, remember like you mentioned the limos,
Mm-hmm.
the town cars. If you stood on the street corner in San Francisco for 2 seconds, a town car would pull up and ask you if you need a cab.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which was totally illegal. There was no one to do anything about it. The MTA would try to do things about it. But
Yeah, I mean that was the MTA's deal. Like they would. You're right. They would try, but you can't.
No, what are
You
you
can't
gonna
control
do?
that. What are you gonna do?
It's not
Yeah, they're
illegal to
everywhere.
stop your car in front of somebody and ask them if they want to ride.
Yeah.
Are
Are other since you deal with other markets, are other markets concerned about autonomous vehicles at all? Is that even on people's radar yet, or no?
It is. I think probably if there's any market that's has the greatest so there's difference. So from a regulator perspective, I think Los Angeles is the one that's probably really panicking. Not panic. That's the wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
They're not panicking at all, but really trying to figure out a way to get ahead of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then from a taxi industry perspective, I would say probably Vegas is the one that's most concerned. Because everyone's always coming after giving rides in Las Vegas. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even Tesla with the tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's like, everyone's trying to get in on that action, moving people up and down the strip.
And I think this actually goes to your point about the fixed route. Like the strip would be far easier for an autonomous vehicle to navigate than another city. Because just like here's all the entry and exit points for the hotels. Here's where you queue up. Here's where you pick up your passengers. Here's where
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Vegas gets crazy, though, so the wild card in that is I would typically say that's true, except for now it's become very common to close the strip or parts of the strip
Mm-hmm.
to cars. So then, so as a matter of fact, the traffic in Vegas right now is so bad, it's taking on some days an hour to get from downtown to the strip.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That was like, what was it, like a 20-minute ride before?
Max.
30 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, max.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And normally without traffic, you could do it in, 5 minutes. Fremont Street to the, Stratosphere
Yeah.
or north end of the strip, Resorts World.
Yeah.
But now it's getting pretty bad. And then like with F1, they're going to close a bunch of roads.
That's so cool, dude.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool.
That's so cool that you're going to have F1 cars racing around the strip.
I don't have that kind of money.
No, I mean, I'm with you. It's just the idea of it is awesome.
The only
love
way
the
I'm
idea
going
of
to
it.
see it is if I get a drone.
Or rent a hotel room at a really, really high floor.
No. So did you see what they're doing about that?
No.
So any rooms that have a view of the race at all has to pay a piece of the action to F1.
Wow.
Yeah. Or else they have to block the view.
Wow. They're going to get their money no matter what, man. Come hell or high water.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
You know what the tickets are?
I don't even bother looking anymore. I mean, I heard the first, few rumors of thousands of dollars, and I was like, I'm out.
Hey, man, listen, I'm just as happy to watch it at home. Just to see Formula One cars racing down the strip and around
Yeah.
Vegas is kind of cool. That's a cool.
And I
concept.
probably will be. That's probably one of the only races I'll watch because it's on the same time zone.
It's the kind of like the same idea as when they race in Monte Carlo,
Yeah.
or south of France, those areas.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just like this really cool.
I never understood why there wasn't one in California. I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. Like, I think I'm surprised that California never got an F1 race.
You could see LA because LA's flat. San Francisco would be tough, man. The Bay Area would be tough.
Yeah, you got the Embarcadero and
Yeah.
Great Highway.
Yeah.
You got Sunset. Well, I don't know.
19th Avenue.
Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate.
Though. Imagine that.
Golden Gate Bridge, Golden Gate Park.
Yeah.
The turns, like turns
Actually,
to
the
Golden Gate Park.
101 up into Marin, going through the tunnels.
Yeah.
That'd actually be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could do that.
Yeah.
You ever see?
Actually, that would be the smart thing to do. Like from the ferry, run it from the ballpark along the Embarcadero, and then up to Mill Valley.
and come back down. Yeah, you could. That's. Did you ever see the? Speaking of racing through the city, did you ever see the Gymkhana videos?
No.
You ever heard of those?
I don't think so.
So Ken Block was one of the founders, I think, of DC Shoe. And after he sold that, he wants to go become a rally car driver, race driver. So he gets into that. Doesn't do terribly well with rally racing, but he starts filming these videos where he's in in a rally car. It's like a Ford Focus or some Subaru rally car.
Oh, I saw
That's tricked out. It's
Yeah.
it's a full-on race car, and he's just tearing ass through a city.
Yeah.
And so they come, and Gymkhana number 5 was in San Francisco. And as they were getting the permits and all that kind of stuff, the city's like, hey, do you guys want us to shut down the Bay Bridge? He's like, fuck yeah, I do. So literally the western span of the Bay Bridge is empty. The whole thing is empty,
wow.
and that's where he takes off.
Ah.
And they film it in parts, but like they had a couple of the streets were completely blocked off. So it looks like the city's empty. And like they had a couple of scenes where like there's 2 cable cars that are going down the track.
Yeah.
And he's like doing figure 8s between the 2 cable cars as they're going, and he's like he does these huge jumps in the hills, and it's a really cool video. You should check it out.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, 5-6 minutes maybe a little bit longer than that, but it's pretty awesome.
That's the one thing. I mean, there's plenty of movies made, quote unquote, in San Francisco. They're not necessarily in San Francisco, but this is one of the problems I have with the mayor. It's like, let's get more movies. And this is one of the best cities to film in, as far as like the visual.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful place. Everything's great to look at. You look at the old movies, and it's like, you want to help the city to come back. I mean, just get people watching it in movies.
They're still trying. They had Planet of the Apes.
I mean, there's been
was
a lot
based
of
around
big
here,
movies. Yeah.
Ant-Man.
Yeah, but they're mostly CGI, not actually in the city.
Yeah.
But like, get real movies and real movies. I mean, there was actually just a really big movie. I say that, but then I'll put on a film and I'm like, oh, that's San Francisco.
Yeah. No, they had us. They rented one of our, when the color scheme was still citywide, the black and red. Ant-Man had us give them a couple of cabs just for the background.
Yeah, I used to love getting those gigs.
Yeah.
We'd get a couple of cabs and some old cabs. We, at DeSoto, we had it was one of those, I don't know what it was, like one of those kind of like athletic, they kind of go through an obstacle course and then they got to run over stuff. And so they wanted wrecked taxi cabs. And so we got about 6 or 8. They wanted 2. It was 2 rows of wrecked cabs, and we put them on a truck, and we took them over by Crissy Field, and they lined them up. I have a photo of it somewhere, and just old wrecked cabs. I don't know what they just wanted people to go over old wrecked cabs for some reason.
Was it like on motorcycles, or just running through like an obstacle
course? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still get those calls from time to time. Hey, we need a taxi cab.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Yeah, I got smart about it because the way we would do it was you'd always have some driver take it out there, pay the driver a piece of it or something. I was like, why don't we just keep a couple of old cabs?
Yeah, just keep them around.
Yeah, that's what I did. I had them. They looked exactly like active cabs.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, we need cabs. I'm like, how many you need?
That's one thing I always thought about. Like, we should have kept like the Chrysler. What were the Chrysler ones way back in the day?
Well, there was the Plymouth Furies.
Yep.
The Dodge Diplomats.
Yep.
And there was the Dodge Monacos if you go way back.
Yeah.
And there was the Chevy Impalas.
Yep.
See, my first cab was a Chevy Impala.
Yeah.
I was all Chevy Impalas for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it became the Caprice.
The Caprice, that's the one I'm
Yeah,
talking
the
about.
Caprice, yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Chevy Caprice.
Chevy Caprice. And then there was then of course, the Crown Victoria.
Iconic.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird because my first cabs, they were all Chevys. And I remember that at the auction, they'd have the Crown Victorias too.
Yeah.
And I always thought they were nice, but they were always more expensive than the Chevys.
The Crown Victorias?
Yeah.
Because they were more in demand, probably.
I don't know. No one up in the Northwest had those for cabs. Very few. But
Oh,
you'd
really?
come down to California, you'd see them all over the place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. This industry's a hell of a ride.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's going to be. I mean, I think there's going to be, like you say, the paratransit, the non-emergency medical transportation. That's definitely a lock, and I think, like I say, there's, I mean, you look at the airports, and it's kind of, LAX is a really good example. They put the Uber, Lyfts, and taxis all in one place,
Yeah.
and so. You go out there and you're like, well, there's an Uber. It's going to cost me, X amount of dollars. And they're not sitting right there like the cabs are. They have to come in. But you look at the price, there's more parity now.
Mm-hmm.
And the new technology in the cabs, they have the ability to have a version of dynamic pricing now.
Right.
And that's just going to keep improving. So I think, things like that, it's like you say, they're things where you need some human interaction, and you just can't, I think the bigger threat really is just people just commuting in general. I mean, I think of myself, like when I travel now, you go to a hotel and you don't ask the people at the hotel, where should I go eat? You look on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you find some place you can walk to or something like that. I think that you're just going to see, it used to be, you'd ask somebody where to go eat, and they'd tell you, oh, go to XYZ place, and it's a 10-minute cab ride, and then...
They'll get you a cab.
Yeah, and the concierge is getting a kickback from the restaurant, the doorman's getting a tip from the cab.
Right.
So they wanted you, they didn't want you to walk anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's just like that's all being bypassed, so that's going to affect things and continue to do that. But otherwise, I think the taxis are going to, and you're still going to have weather. You're still going to have wind and rain and fog, and there's, and you think about COVID and when taxi drivers started delivering groceries to people.
Yeah.
And it's just fluid. It's a fluid industry.
Yeah.
It adapts to whatever's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
And you can't pivot. That's actually kind of a good point. I mean, look what happened to Lyft. They couldn't pivot, right?
Yeah.
Uber pivoted, but they didn't pivot during the pandemic
They set themselves up to pivot.
by accident.
Yeah, well, look, delivery, whether it's food or packages or whatever it is, it's a natural extension of transportation, of like transporting people, right?
That goes back to where we started the conversation, right? If Travis wasn't so aggressive and like just going after everything all at once,
Yeah.
Uber wouldn't have been in that position to pivot.
You're right, and it would take somebody as aggressive as Travis to deal with the regulators and deal with governments and opening the market up the way that he did. Nothing short of his level of, let's call it tenacity, for lack of a better word.
And that's where technology is also making a more even play field, right? Because Uber and Lyft, they're not regulated the way taxis are, but because of technology, taxis are getting a lot more flexibility. And the regulators are standardizing the technology that's used for taxis.
Well, they're changing the regulations, and this is one thing I do want to credit the SFMTA with, is they do understand how Uber and Lyft change things, and they're open to regulating things differently so that we can have the flexibility that the TNCs have.
Yeah.
to a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I have conversations with them, and it makes sense, something that's logical, it makes sense. They're always they're pretty open to it. So, yeah, I mean, they changed things. And like you said, like we talked about earlier, they made the pie bigger, right? And
Oh yeah. No, I mean what Uber did is they proved basically what a lot of us theorized anyway, that there
Mhm.
wasn't enough cabs, and yeah, and they expanded. I mean, you think about it, the taxi industry now has how much room to possibly grow, right? If you're looking at for growth, okay, Uber's at in one place, Lyft's at another place. The taxi industry has a lot of potential. I mean, a lot.
I mean,
You're talking triple digits.
You think so?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
How would you achieve that kind of growth?
And in a lot of cities, taxis of that kind of passenger transportation, that one person getting in a car like an Uber, a Lyft, or a taxi,
Mhm.
taxis are doing less than 1.5%, 2% of the overall trips.
Right.
So that means you have a huge potential for growth. I mean, if taxis only grow up to 10%, that's 10 times as much business as we have now.
Right.
You don't need to scale.
But how do you do that growth? How do you achieve that growth? What do you think?
That's that's interesting. So I have to be careful with that one because
Mhm.
I have to be careful. I don't want to. I have to think of my business.
Yes.
And I can't say anything proprietary. But I think that I think I think one thing that the cab industry has, it's a huge advantage, is it's a local and it's a small business.
Mm-hmm.
And not to talk about my employer so much, but one thing that Curb really does is supports a small business.
Yeah.
And so small businesses, if they have an appropriate if they have appropriate amounts of capital and if they have the proper leadership, they can dominate a region. At least enough. I mean, you look at supermarket chains, right?
Yeah.
You have regional supermarket chains. You have regional restaurants. You have, they're not McDonald's,
No.
but in
You're
the
right.
region they're in, they're huge. Nation's Burgers, for example, around here is
Yeah.
one. You have and there's things that you can do, and people do like to have a local brand. And if the robo taxi technology is going to come around, just like the EVs, the taxi industry can adopt that too. There's
Yeah.
nothing to say that your yellow cab one day, you can't have some robo taxi yellow cabs.
Yeah.
You can.
I mean, we still have 20% of our calls that don't get picked up.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we were talking earlier about having, when we were trying to expand the footprint of the cab industry in San Francisco years ago,
Mhm.
we'll have sedans picking up the grocery store calls, right?
Mhm.
You could have robo-taxis running people from the Safeway on Webster Street and up and down Fillmore.
You could. You
Yeah.
totally could. Drivers wouldn't take too kindly to that, but it's if
They
it's
don't want the rides anyway. So,
yeah, they're not taking them.
yeah, you have the robo-taxis doing the rides that the drivers don't want to do.
I think that ultimately comes down to the drivers.
Yeah.
They have to see themselves as these local business owners that are part of the community, and they have to. I think they have to collectively. They have to want to do that, because I think they could. I think you're right. You could, if the service was exceptional, right? You could easily grow it.
Oh, I know one driver that I talk to frequently. He hasn't picked up. He has so many regulars,
Yeah.
and he was. I mean, I know he's telling me the truth. He doesn't exaggerate because he's
Mhm.
known me for years. He had one of his riders tipped him $300 the other day
Jeez.
for a ride to the airport because they just rely on him. And there was it was a little bit of a bonus because they're going away
Yeah,
for
it's
a
like,
while.
hey,
Yeah.
you've been taking care of me
Yeah,
for so long.
exactly.
Thank you so much. Here
yeah,
you go.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, again, it goes back to like, you know, the similar, like the little corner bodega, you know, you get the regulars in there.
Yeah,
And
you get to know your corner store guy. He
some of
becomes
them come in to just chat. They know they're paying more for their bottle of wine,
right.
but they want your thoughts about the wine, or they want to know what you think about what was just on the news this morning.
Yeah,
They want to BS with you. And
I had customers like that all the time when I
Yeah.
had a liquor store. Man, they would come in and he's getting his pack of smokes or he's getting whatever it is, and you're there for convenience. You're close by. He can walk a few blocks and get to you. You know, same. You can see this. You can see the same thing with a taxi cab. I mean, if people would just look up, they're right there.
yeah,
You know, they're driving around. They're driving around the entire city. You just look up, they're right there.
it's right there.
People walk out of the hotels
Yeah.
with their nose in their phone, and there's like
Yeah.
a line of 10 cabs. Just, hey, I
Yeah.
take you wherever you want to go. You know, similar pricing.
Yeah.
I'll even negotiate sometimes. You know.
No, and there's the edge
Yeah.
cases. You know, I mean, you can't do everything with technology. I mean, you can do a lot, but you can't do everything. And you know, you look at the wildfires that have happened, you know, in urban areas. You look at, you know, earthquakes. You look at hurricanes, floods, and your technology is not going to do a lot for you in those cases.
No.
You need someone who knows.
Well, you're right, and the biggest, to me, from what I've understood, I mean, I couldn't hack it as a cab driver. I tried for 6 months. It's just I couldn't do it. But the thing that I've noticed from the drivers that I do talk to and that I've encountered in my career, the biggest thing for them is building that relationship with the customer and getting their personals. Like we had there was a guy, he doesn't drive with us, he doesn't drive at Yellow anymore, or at least from us anymore, but he had personals to the point where he was farming them out to 3 or 4 other drivers,
Yeah.
right? And the person that calls him knows, if I call Eric, I know I'm going to get a ride, whether it's him or somebody else. I know I'm going to be treated well, and he only trusted certain guys because these are his personal customers, and he developed these over the years, and that's how you're making your own. That's how you're
Yeah.
making your own business and making your money.
100%.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. No.
Anything else you want to talk about? It's been like we got what?
Probably
Almost
not.
2 hours
I
now.
think you got plenty to edit down.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
This
It's
is fun.
Yeah.
I'm getting a kick out of this.
Yeah. I can tell you like it.
It's the same people that I know. I interact with everybody, anyways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a way to have a nice conversation about the industry and figure out different perspectives and opinions on what's going on. And I think I think we're due for it, man.
Yeah.
This might end up being some little niche podcast where I only get a few hundred views on the videos, but who cares? I'm having fun. I get to talk to my friends and people that I've known for many, many years and get the conversation out there.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it, bro.
Cool, man. Thanks.
All right.